Well, we may as well go ahead and get started. First, again, let me welcome you. This is Victoria Edelman with the ALSP, the Association of Litigation Support Professionals, and we're thrilled to offer this event today. I am the head of the Education Committee for the ALSP, and we have been hoping to expand, the last year, our educational offerings, both for our members and for prospective members. And this is the first event that we're doing in 2011, hopefully the first of many. All right, well, let me tell you, I've got a couple of little logistical things that I was going to mention, and then I'll introduce our speaker, Mary Mack. If you need to reach us during the event, all of the callers on this webinar are muted. It was just too large a group to open up for the audio. So the best way to reach us is the Q&A panel in the bottom right corner of the screen. I'll be watching that, and I'll be jumping in and interrupting Mary as we go along, as we get questions in. And if we get anything that probably needs further discussion, I might hold it for the end. And I should tell you a little bit about the Association of Litigation Support Professionals. It's been around for about 5 years now, I think, and the goal is to sort of further the industry development for litigation support. And obviously there's an emphasis on e-discovery in our industry in the last couple of years. We have several active chapters scattered all over the country, and we're always looking for new members for networking and professional development and education opportunities. And our site is alsponline.org. All right, so tell you a little bit about Mary. Mary is the Enterprise Technology Counsel at ZyLAB. This is a relatively new role for her. You may recognize her name from FIOS. She was the Corporate Technology Counsel at FIOS for about 10 years. And she is an inveterate blogger. She wrote the Sound Evidence blog at discoveryresources.org for about 6 years. And she's been very active in the industry, has her law degree from Northwestern, and has written numerous articles on e-discovery over the years. So without further ado, let me pass the baton to Mary. Mary, thank you so much for doing this. We're so excited to have you here for our first event in 2011.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, and you have just made this a pleasure to prepare for and to present. So,
thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So if we move into our topic, many of you who are on the line that may not be looking at slides will have the slideshow. Victoria, you'll have it available for people so that they can, if they want to see slides, if they're not online.
Yes, that's a very good point. By the way, I will be sending a follow-up email out after this event with a link to the survey and a copy of this presentation in case you missed the visuals. And we're also recording this event, and I'll send out a link to the recording in case you want to take a look at it or share it with one of your colleagues.
And along those lines, if I reference something that's not on the slides, if one of you would just send something in the Q&A, and we'll make sure that we include the link or the appropriate reference for you. Follow up. So with that, we're going to jump right into the computing. Everybody knows about it. Everybody's been reading about it. But what is it, and what are some of the things that are emerging? Many of us have leased computers, or we've heard of data centers being outsourced. This computing is really an outgrowth of an expansion of those particular concepts. And there are a couple of things that are very interesting for legal organizations. And the one would be hosted private cloud, on-premise private cloud, or the hybrid clouds. Because public clouds, they tend to, unless you have a really good service level agreement, which we'll cover later, the whole idea of cloud is that it's like cloudy, foggy. You don't quite know where your data is. Your data could be split into a gazillion different pieces and placed into all sorts of different jurisdictions and ownership and various things. So for us in the legal world, we like to know generally where our data reside. Now, with clients, Well, our clients aren't legal people generally, and so they may not know. And so we're going to go through and talk about how do you suss out where your client's data may reside, and then along the way there'll be some considerations for you as litigation support professionals that have budgets that are, everybody's looking at those great rates. So how can you take advantage of them and still protect your interests? This is going to be like typical hardware put for the year because the feds are pushing it. The feds are developing standards for cloud computing, which will make it a lot safer for organizations to go to the cloud. They're going to catch up with the legal implications of cloud computing, the jurisdictional and other things we're going to cover. But with the federal government putting the standards together and then writing big contracts, it's sort of going to be a bit of a gold rush, I think, moving to the cloud. And many clients are going to make this move, really thinking it through. And what I'm thinking about are clients that may be under perpetual legal hold, for example. They have different considerations than a client that needs to, cut costs and may have a couple of employment claims, but not much else. So these things that because of normal business, budget, personnel, organizations are going to look to get risk centers in their electric and real estate. They're not necessarily going to want to purchase equipment and the network connectivity associated with big data centers. And so you will see like Amazon or Dell or IBM, various places, or the corner, the equivalent of the corner store that has that's an ISP network, an internet service provider that will provide cloud storage for and these will be the sales unique selling propositions to get people to move to the cloud. But what's
Mary?
the concerns? Yes.
I always think that when I used to spend a summer working at NOAA many years ago, I always thought that a weather satellite was like the perfect argument for something we should spend taxes on. They're just too expensive to build one on your own, right? I always think that these clouds are the same idea. I think the reason why the government is going to be leading this push is because building networks is extremely difficult, and when they get complex enough to be called a cloud, it doesn't make sense to build one on your own. Like you talked about private clouds, and there's certainly lots of those out there, but because they're so expensive, I think it makes more sense to do these and then have multiple clients that are utilizing, sharing the resources. And as always, as the price goes down, to a reasonable amount, the government is going to be the first one that's going to jump on that. So I'm based here in D.C., and we've been hearing a lot about that from the government market over the last couple of years, but particularly this year, it looks like they're out there sourcing clouds right now as we speak.
They are, as are other organizations, and I think I think it's a move that's going to occur, and I also believe that those of us in the trenches of the legal, particularly around legal holds and privacy and trade secret and things like that we raise those as functional requirements. I'll give you an example. Cisco had a nice white paper on how you would choose which data center a particular request would go to, and it was all about the IP address of the requester and doing a latitude longitude on it to find out where they were located, and then what trace route, what route would be the shortest route to the server. and it talked about how busy the servers might be and capacity and traffic, but nowhere in the discussion was anything about what jurisdiction was it in. Were there tax implications? Were there privacy implications? Were there trade secret implications? So I think these are functional requirements that, if they are baked into cloud computing, will make it better for clients and for themselves in a legal sense. Does that make sense, Victoria?
Yes, that does. It's so interesting that the technologists tend to charge ahead with these developments sometimes without thinking about sort of jurisdictional issues, which of course is pay us big bucks. But
yeah, and I think this is one of those temporary issues. Probably the next for the next maybe 3 years or so before it all gets worked out. But those of us in this environment, we can raise the issues, raise the questions, so that we steward our clients' interests. Our international considerations. That's what we were just talking about. Most of those are privacy issues, although there are attorney-client privilege issues that we want to be concerned with, because jurisdictions do not recognize attorney-client privileges. So if you, as a practice support leader, are thinking about moving the law firm's data to the cloud, you'll want to know where it resides for those purposes. Okay, we've got our apps. Everybody knows about apps, and various devices are sourcing data for ourselves and for our clients, and we have no idea where that data resides. Moving into the e-discovery and cloud computing and information management all the way through presentation, you can tell that there's going to be some pretty unique considerations. Information management, those of you who are doing litigation readiness with your clients, update the data retention policy to, of course, include your social media and your SharePoint, and some of the things that we've talked about over the last couple of years, like voice and video. Most of us have updated for third parties, ADP and payroll processing and SalesForce, and the collaboration tools. We're also going to need to update those data retention policies for the cloud. And what does your cloud, data retention policy does your cloud have in of itself? And then what service level agreements do you want to have with your cloud provider for your own data? And then if you're thinking about your clients, for your clients. And because clouds are in development, I mean, this is a rapidly developing, scaling, unscaling operation. The monitoring of the cloud should be done more than monitoring something that's is traditionally like a static system. Doesn't change so much. So in terms of retention and archiving, this is an example of a SharePoint screen where you can either copy to a new archive or you can archive in place, and you'll want to know how your collaboration tools are doing those archiving activities, because you need to be able to use the system, change documents, check them in, check them out, and at the same time you need to preserve. Example of a legal hold sample questionnaire where you can amend your protocols to include the questions about the cloud. Do you use, let's start at the individual custodian level, do you use something like Dropbox to store and move files? Moving into the IT area, do you use a third-party provider? Do you use a Rackspace or an IBM to store your data? So the preparation is probably the biggest thing. You have a protocol for that, and the key thing with third-party providers is, can they put on a selective hold? Many of us were surprised with the unified messaging, the voicemail that goes into your email box. That you could have a voice server, and yes, you could put a hold on it, but you could put a hold on it for the whole server, which meant everybody's email or everybody's voicemails were being stored forever and ever. You couldn't put a selective hold on because they did not bake that requirement in as a functional requirement for the voicemail. This was early on. It's gotten better since then, but very important to find out if you can put that selective hold on, and then is it just a physical hold, meaning, okay, I can put a selective hold on a particular server or a particular subdirectory, or is the information segmented in other ways that hold can be put on? Whenever you are using a shared environment, if you do forensics, you will pick up more than you might anticipate, which is okay because most of the time you're not needing to do forensics on servers. Those forensics on servers are generally done around network intrusions or e-commerce fraud activities and things like that, but just something to be aware of. And I think the problem of collection during outsourced activities, so that if your client is using an EDS or what's the other one? It's escaping me right now. EDS or IM or HP as their outsourced provider of data processing services. If in that outsourced agreement there isn't a section for rapid response for legal, then you end up negotiating that in the middle of trying to put a hold on, in the middle of trying to get emergency collections of custodians. So those of you doing proactive work, it's good to get those in the cloud agreements from the beginning. And then if you do need to collect, more than likely the cloud organization will want to do their own collection. And so are their employees trained in handling evidence? We all know what happens to dates when you move them across media. They allow third-party collection if you want it. So some of the cases, I put these in reviews so that you would use them around the Stored Communications Act. Yes.
Let me jump into the cases. I had two interesting questions that came in. One of them was about mashups. How would you define mashups? And if you want to start with that.
Okay. A mash.
Is it like a Facebook feed on another application?
That's yes. That is kind of what it. One example I would use of a mashup, and it's a very simple one because it only has two, would be TripAdvisor and Facebook, where you're able to see your friends' recommendations on the TripAdvisor site, so that it's more than one organization's application interacting with another one. Sometimes the geolocation and what they call augmented reality now, with mashups of maybe Yelp and Google Street Maps together, and the more the merrier in the mashup.
The other question that had just popped in was what kinds of applications, you mentioned some of the like iPhone applications and iPad applications, that kind of thing. Which one of those do you think are going to cause the most sort of forensic collection headaches, just at a general level, at a high level?
Forensic collection headaches.
I think the one that popped in there was Dropbox, because I use Dropbox for personal stuff, and then now an iPad. I don't have an iPhone. I have an iPod Touch, but there's actually a Dropbox application that I can put documents on there on my iPod.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Dropbox is getting very, very popular for its ease ease of use. Well, with forensic collection, it's all device and physical media dependent. So there are applications that will forensically collect the iPad or the phone. When downloading whole files, you'll probably, I haven't seen them, and so I'm kind of talking out of my ear here, but you would at least know the names of the files and MISA is probably what is being shown on the screen. That generally spools to the storage device. So it'll keep the forensic people very, very busy. With the increase in the size of the drives on the iPads and the phones, just amazing. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on the custody and control, and whether your organization, your cloud organization, either needs to or is prohibited from with subpoenas. But these cases are ones that are illustrative of the challenges, and as you're working with your attorneys, these would be cases to give them to apply to your particular situation. We could do an entire webcast on custody and control. Now, get into the processing part of the EDRM. Understanding what can happen inside the cloud around machine allocation and release, I think, is key. If you're going to use cloud computing resources to process electronic data, which is something that we do as well, you're going to want to know, once you're done, are you sure that your material is off the devices that you used for your particular spike? The devices that you're using all the time, you pretty need to know the data is gone at the end of the case. But if you're expanding and releasing, which is the main functional requirement of a cloud, is that you have that elasticity, you're going to want to understand how that happens. And you have something, Victoria?
Oh, no, I'm so sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. So then, in review, there's not much to talk about here, except that everybody's using web-based review tools. The difference today is that the storage may not be in one physical location, and that's just the question and the due diligence to ask around where is the data. And then in terms of presentation, the key thing there, I think, is being the bottom one, authentication, making sure that you have like a person most knowledgeable inside the cloud environment who can execute an affidavit around the retention policy or around how a particular file was collected, if it became an issue. And when I say looking right, as files are collected, the paths may change. So if you move a file from one location to another location, the path may change. And some of us have dealt with what we call relative paths, where you take the front of the path off and just have basically my documents / wherever it goes to, because the path names are extremely long, and some of the litigation support packages don't support the long path names. But why in the world am I talking about path names? Isn't that like a granular thing? Isn't that like too granular for this conversation? Well, I say, maybe last month I would have said yes, but I'm going to read you from Judge Shenlin's new Day Brewer case. it says, I conclude all future productions by defendants, and it's just in this particular case, must include load files that include the following fields, which apply to all forms of ESI. The identifier, the file name, the custodian, the source device, as the device from which the item was collected, the source path, the file path from the location from which the item was collected. And goes on to say modified date and modified time, which is fantastic. So not create date, which changes as you traverse media. And then also says the time offset value, which means when was it collected, or the the relative offset for Greenwich Mean Time. So you need to know something about is Greenwich Mean Time when you get. If it's not, what time zone were they using for the particular dates? This is in the Day Laborer case, and while she says it's not applicable to all cases, there's also language in there that says that that's the bare minimum standard. So all of a sudden, Judge Shenlin is talking about file paths. In a cloud computing environment, that file path could be pretty darn complicated, and you want to make sure that it looks that the way they name their directories look right. For example, you certainly don't want a directory that says smoking gun, or who knows what people aren't trained in litigation. Who knows what directory names they will put into? So you want to make sure it all looks right.
Mary, we had a question that popped in about private clouds. Do you need to be as careful and as thorough in your understanding of sort of the allocation and release and file path naming when you're working in a private cloud?
Well, when you're working in a private cloud, you have so much more control over how things are done, and the allocation release is not as an issue, because it only becomes an issue if it's going to be released to another organization. If it's released to your own organization, it's much safer.
Not as risky. All right.
Not as risky. And again, these are risks. Risks can be managed. Just that if you don't know that they're there, and you walk into something that you might have been able to see, and that's the thing that I just want to raise for people. Let's talk about some practical approaches. So, as we were just saying, you have to understand your risk profile. The organization with just a couple of employment cases, much less risky than what we would call the serial litigant that is always under legal hold. And I would also put forth legal law firms, by their very nature, are risky organizations because they hold privileged materials. So I think it's very important to be very careful and diligent with that particular data, and then understanding the locales that your data may reside in. And if you look through there, you'll see several factors in terms of criminal procedure. Does the particular location are they susceptible to what they call dawn raids? And dawn raids are where the authorities come in and they actually seize the computer. So it's not just like a forensic collection and then you go on and do your business. They can actually take the computers. It's sort of what the U.S. government used to do back 8 years ago. Also, let's see, we talked about various privacy and privilege. You want to be careful about what they call nexus, and this is those of you who are service providers like myself. You want to be careful there because that can give rise to tax issues. Where is the activity being performed? Where's the benefit this is something for the accounting people, but you want to know about locations for those reasons. And then there is this emerging practice where cloud or application service providers like a SalesForce.com or a Google, where they may not access your information with identifying information, but that they use some of the information for trends. And so they are looking, their systems are going through information, whether you're going to allow that or not.
I had a question about audits. I actually got asked this by a student recently. Are there any organizations that you know of in the e-discovery space who could come in and do, basically an audit and like an accounting company might, give a certificate that says, here's that you're in compliance with the best practices of sort of e-discovery in general. Is there an organization? I haven't found one in my research.
I don't know if there's an e-discovery one. I know we've got a DoD certification, and there's some ISO certifications on data handling. But I think that this move to the cloud is is new. The standards are emerging. I will look and see if I can find anything.
Great.
Okay, so let's see. In your contracts, here are some things to look for. Let's see, thing that is interesting. No, those are just pretty standard, except as you move forward with contracts, making sure that you include what I call legal functional requirements. You'll see those listed under the litigation there. These are some of the regulatory issues around keeping data, and the ones in the United States is the data breach legislation, and who's responsible for the data breach. You're at a cloud computing organization, and there is data leakage. The cloud organization will notify their client, and then the client is responsible for notifying others. And so it's important to include that as part of the engagement. There are, of course, all these other regulatory issues around, your financial, personally identifiable information, your Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and UK Bribery Act, Stored Communications Act. All of these things are applicable to data, not only to data in the cloud, but to create the relationships where your data is in the cloud. Let's talk about service levels. This is something that is near and dear, I think, to every project manager, practice support manager. And what can you expect from your counterparts in an organization? So in your own organization, you may have 2-hour, 4-hour response time for various things. And moving to your client's organization, what can you expect from them? What can they expect from you? And then now you're moving into a cloud organization. And what can you expect from the cloud provider? And let's stop just for a quick sec, because when we say cloud provider, that word is singular. There are cloud providers that subcontract or pool resources, so you may not be dealing with only one organization. Very important to know who many you are dealing with. So in your service level agreements, you may not need these via contract, but you would refer, of course, to the service level agreement. Then make sure that you have your roles and your data access, the logging levels, in review in the review stage. Most clients like to have who reviewed a particular document, who had access to a particular document, if any documents were downloaded. Those are generally application related. But inside the cloud, there would be hardware access logs that would be kept, and those are outside of the particular application. So how long will those be kept? At what level will they be kept to have in your service level agreements?
I had a comment that came in about data mapping, and I was looking at the service level agreements and thinking that, if you were, like you said, a serial litigator, if you were involved in a lot of litigations, maybe to your industry, it might be to go ahead and put in a requirement about ESI, maps about having your cloud provider maintain, the maps for any of the, the data that is on, that you have on their system, not really disclosing subcontractors and things like that.
That's a fantastic suggestion, to include that in the data mapping, and then also, yes, having a provision to disclose the subcontractors as well. Exactly. Yeah, it's all about transparency, and transfer us. If you're a normal person, you just want it to work. You want it to be quick, fast, and work. So we're dealing in the details that that others are probably would. If we were at a cocktail party, would just fun and then move to another conversation. So let's talk about the very exciting concept of monitoring. So certainly with a cloud provider, you'll want to test it outside of the stresses of major litigation. So some of the aspects that can be difficult, depending on how a system is set up technically. Sometimes it's very, very easy to get data into a system and not so easy to get it out. Deleting data sometimes causes access to be rebuilt and is not designed as well as the getting the data into the system. So you'll want to test that, and your I would say both bulk collection and issue. Can you data in quickly? Can you get data out quickly? Or is it a system that is designed more for like a one file at a time, small files? You'll test that because remember back in the early days of document management systems that weren't set up for the rigors of litigation. It was great, everybody was saving everything, but if you tried to pull it out, you wanted to, pull out, 50,000 documents, it could take you a couple of days, and it would bring the system to its knees. Now, since then, those requirements have been baked into document management systems, but now we're talking about cloud environments that are not taking legal functional requirements into effect. So it's up to us to look at those things. My screen's not advancing. Here we go.
Actually,
right.
While you're taking a break, the minute I mentioned audits, we got a couple of evidence that came in. There's one that I want to pass on to you, and again, this is just from a listener. He said to look at consult-ed.org. That they another company called Directive 63 to do audits. It would just be one place to start, obviously, in your research, but I just thought I'd pass that on.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That's helpful. Yeah, this is one of the delights of speaking to a audience. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, moving into social media concerns. I started out, I was going to share my desktop and actually go through some of the interesting programs, but that did not quite work out well for me at the beginning, did it, Victoria?
Sorry about that.
That's all right. That's all right. So, in terms of witnesses and jurors, you're seeing now that the latest was attorneys are Googling potential jurors to see out there on them. And I would say, Googling is like 101. There's so many tools out there to find out information on a person that you can use. One of them that in Atlanta, I was watching the news and they were talking about this social media company that allowed you to put people's names in there and find out everything about them. And they were interviewing people because they were absolutely frightened because it shows a Google picture of the house, and it also tells how many people live in the house. So women living alone they were truly frightened. And then the television station gave the link to get your information out of this particular database. So that company that they were talking about is a company called Spokeo, Spokeo, and you can put in a name, and it will give you all over the United States what's popping up on that particular name. Of course, if you have a patient, it narrows it down a little bit easier. An email address, a screen name, and a telephone number. And it triangulates inside publicly available sources, including social media. And it will up, for example, my Twitter name is Mac Mary. And so it'll pull up, if I put that in, it will pull up every Mac Mary. And I didn't back in the go out and get every single social media on that. So there are people that are not me. But it will through the various social media, and I think Mac Mary is my Facebook as well, and so it's a real name, Mary Mac, and then you can link to it, and then you can see what's in there. It's an aggregator that also displays things like political contributions, what they call relative wealth, the wealth of the neighborhood, the friends on the various social media. So this is something that not only for jurors but witnesses. These are areas of risk, and then also these are areas that may need to be collected. And
what name is that website? I'm so sorry. Someone asked. If you could spell it one more.
SPOKEO.com, or like I like to refer to it as Spookio, because it does scare me. But that is one of many sites that are emerging that track is publicly available around screens and email addresses. And these are things that your custodians are probably not aware they can so easily tracked and found. Let's see, you're talking about one other thing for witnesses and jurors. If you go to LinkedIn, if you go to my LinkedIn, for example, just Mary Mac and eDiscovery, I'll pop up. On the right side, and it's only for somebody who you look up. You can't see this on your own profile, so if you don't use me, use somebody else. On the right side is something that says reference check, and what it does is it goes through and it looks at the resume that you put into LinkedIn and the dates and the organizations, and it pulls up people that worked with me or could have worked with me for example, back at FIOS or at various places where I've been employed, or we did one for Brenda, our director, and we're able to pull up 3 people from 1999 that worked for at multiple sclerosis associations. So this is also publicly available information, and as you're counseling clients around who's the person most knowledgeable, who's likely to be deposed, it would be a good place to do your due diligence, see what's visible around the people that you choose. Maybe you can't find somebody and you're looking for somebody. It's a good place to go for that. Moving into other social media concerns around preservation. I think the big issue there is counseling clients not shut down their social media identities, like as part of a legal hold process. Some people would just say, "Well, I've got to be more circumspect about activities, so I'm going to shut these things down," not thinking that when they shut them down, if the organization that they're like a Yahoo Mail or a Hotmail or something like that, with a donated account, it might hold them for 30 days, it might hold them for 60 days, it might hold them for 2 years. You don't know what the retention policy is of the particular organization, so that social media may be lost. So counseling people to keep their accounts open, and around preservation and collection, there are a couple of tools that can be used just specific for social media. I know like uses an XML, so it's like language of the web. There are also there's a company, Iterazi, that will freeze the web as it looks, and then you can play it back. It'll save it and play it back and authenticate it. Smart, another company that collects social media, and there are third parties that collect social media, not necessarily for litigation purposes, but they have like a huge database of it. Radian 6 is one of them, and they collect it for clients or competitors of clients or organizations they'd like to be their clients, and they're collecting the social media so that they can at the sentiment of ad campaigns and customer service and things of that nature. So there may be a lot preserved in social media that would be available from third parties. And then, of course, when you process, review, and produce things like social media that come off the web, some of those things are dynamic, and it might be better to use a Camtasia, or you can put it in pages into search engines, and you'll want to make sure that your search engines can dust web material with all of those brackets in the source files, that they can discern the actual words, because the words are contained inside of computer programming. So it creates a challenge for some systems in terms of data reduction and pinpoint searching or search term searching. Again, the presentation mode, Camtasia is a great program to show web and social media as it is or as it looked. You could produce a training video. So into the end of the program, here are the NIST guidelines for cloud computing. Their draft, their information, and so we've got a link there for you. That's a good place to start, and of course join ALSP. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the plug. We did get a question if you could perhaps list those companies again that do the social media collection. I caught Smarsh and Radian 6.
Okay, so Smarsh and Radian, yes, Smarsh, S-M-A-R-S-H, Radian 6, R-A-D-I-A-N 6. Interruption, I-T-E-R-A-S-I, I believe. There's another one called Page Freezer, and iCyte, I-C-Y-T-E. We talked about Spokeo, S-P-O-K-E-O, for at all the various different social media. There's another one called Flowtown, F-L-O-W-T-O-W-N, and the reference check on LinkedIn, which is the box to the right, where it's near the bottom where it says like send a message, add to network. There's reference check there.
Two suggestions from our listeners: Arkovi, A-R-K-O-V-I. Next Point.
Great.
Next Point.
Great. Yeah, I think over the next year or two we're going to see a lot more emerging around the preservation, collection, view, and production of social media. And the cases are really interesting, where you think that we have a privacy concern, say the private data on Facebook or on other social sites, but where the rubber's really meeting the road these days is in called personal injury cases, in intentional. If you're alleging extreme emotional duress or those types of things, your postings seem to be discoverable because of state of mind and being able to get at state of mind. Also, in terms of personal injury, if let's say you say you're having an impact, personal injury impact, then your postings of where you're going, or if there are pictures of you doing rock climbing, for example, when you said you have a bad back, or where that the discoverability of personal information off of the social networks, it's really surprising to me, very, very surprising at how broadly things are being interpreted.
Yeah. Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much. I will give our listeners one more chance to send in their questions. And let me also just remind everyone that we'll be sending out the PowerPoint and a link to the recording in the follow-up email. I get a list from what's at the end with everyone's email addresses, so I'll send that out. It takes a couple of hours, but we'll get that out today. All right. I don't have any additional questions coming in. Mary, did you have a final thought?
Well, my final thought is thank you for your kind attention during this. This is an emerging topic, and there aren't a lot of hard and fast answers. There's a lot of questions. So I thank you for your attention today.
Yes, thank you all so much for joining us. And we're going to wrap up just a little bit early. If you think of something later, don't hesitate to email us. We'd like to continue the discussion, as it were. As Mary was mentioning, these things are still developing. So lots of fun stuff to look at for our industry over the next couple of years. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. Take care and have a great day. And again, Mary, thank you.
Thank you, Victoria.
Okay. Bye-bye.